looking for a game about Vikings or Arthurian heroics or anything dark, gritty and steeped in Dark Age legend, then you're in for a treat. I'm going to be looking at the recent skirmish game called Pillage and have a crack at paint and stuff I have very little knowledge about. I'm Peachy and this is Peachy Tips. Now, the Dark Ages isn't a period I'm super familiar with. I mean, I can tell the difference between my Vikings, Anglo-Saxons, my Normans and my Scots and all those other things. But other than watching like a few TV shows, my knowledge of this period is very minimal. And that's fine because I've always wanted to give it a crack and have a go. And now recently, Victrix have brought out a skirmish game called Pillage. Now, I'm probably going to murder the author's name or the game designer's name. Guillaume Rousselot. Guillaume Rousselot. Now, I'm a big fan of the Victrix plastics, have been for many years. I've collected all sorts of stuff for various projects, whether that is my historical stuff or random fantasy things or anything else in between. Trench Crusade, I guess. I've used them for that too. Now, recently I did get a hold of some of the Dark Age stuff, mostly to use as like a comparison for like a Lord of the Rings video I did a little while back, and also just to paint up for like things like 5 Leagues from the Borderlands or Frostgrave to use as like barbarians and warriors to fight against. So seeing as I got some of these models already, I thought, you know what, might as well have a crack at doing a warband, paint some stuff up and have a go at the game and then talk about it. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. Now, the first thing I noticed with this game, so I've had a good read through it. It reminds me so much of how Lord of the Rings plays. So Middle-earth strategy battle game, or MESBG as some people will call it. I just call it Lord of the Rings because it's easy. I played that loads to death almost. And this game has strong vibes to that. It's not the exact same when it comes to like sort of profiles, which I'll come to in a minute. The models don't have any, which is wild. But it has a very similar way of playing. So if you're familiar with Lord of the Rings, you'll be very familiar with this game. So whether you're using cavalry or you're just moving around and doing stuff and engaging in the scenery around you, it feels very much like that. And also plays a lot like that as well. I won't say the rules are carbon copied, not by any means. They are their own rule set, but they do have a strong Lord of the Rings skirmish game feel to it, which is great. Now, talking about the profile. So I was pleasantly surprised and kind of shocked actually to see there was no profiles for the infantry or warriors or anything like that. I was very confused at first. I was like, where's the profiles? In fact, in the rules, if you were to argue there's a profile, there is only one simple yet effective profile category, if you like, which is the armor class. So I'm just going to quickly talk about the different armor classes that there is. So you've got unarmored, or UA as it's referred to in the rules. This is representative of not wearing any armor. So you are wearing clothes or nothing. You're in your birthday suit. Then there's some armor, which is referred to as SA in the rules. This is either a shield or some mail vest or leather jerkin or something like that. So it's one or the other. It's not both. And then you move on to full armor, or FA as it's known. And that is, well, you're coated in armor. So you've got a helmet, you've got a mail shirt, and you've got a big whopping shield. So this will be the terminology you'll see a lot in the game when you're playing mostly through shooting and combat, that determines when things get hit or damaged or whatever. Now in the game, there is a little stat for like movement. So whether you've got cavalry or you've got warriors, and this will be affected by the type of armor you've got as well. So again, that armor profile kicking in there to like change how far you can move. Again, quite simple, straightforward. I really like that. It's not too much nonsense to get confused with. Everyone has the same move value, and then obviously depending on how much armor you're on, you minus some of that off. When it comes to building your forces, this is the thing again that threw me. I was like looking for like, because on the actual roster sheet it will say things like Chieftain, Warrior, Huskar, Berserker, and they all cost different points and you upgrade them with different weapons. So far, looking through all the factions, I've not seen any weapons being more expensive for different characters. So it looks like it's the same cost regardless. I could be wrong there. I've checked through and I've not noticed them being any different. But what you do, let's say, for instance, you're picking a Huskar, and that costs a certain amount of gold coins, and then you equip it with a shield, and then you equip them with armor, and then a spear or a Dane axe or something like that. That's how much they're going to cost in the game. But I'm like, okay, but what makes a Huskar different to a warrior? Well, that's a great thing. There's a page that covers this. So as opposed to having a different profile, they just have different rules in the game. So a chieftain will have more wounds and more attacks. That's mentioned in this section. Your other warriors can normally be armed with like either a spear and a shield or a sword and a shield or whatever you want to give them. But what I really like about the Huskars is you can pay the points to give them a Dane axe, a shield and a sword, and then during the game they can swap and change between those during the game, which I think is a really, really fun little mechanic. Then you get berserkers that have their own rules as well, and then healers, and then supply wagons, lots of extra kind of cool stuff. So I really like that, the fact that you have these different unit types, and as opposed to having different profiles, they just do different stuff in the game, which is really fun. Actually, I don't think I've experienced, I mean, I'm still quite new to like looking at all the different games out there. I don't think I found a game that kind of does it in this way, where it just has, that's your profile as your armor, and then after that everything works around it. It's really, really interesting to me, and I really like it as a mechanic. Very fun. Now, again, as I mentioned before, reading through the rules, it really does have strong Middle-earth strategy battle game vibes. I know I've said this already, but it really does. So whether that's from the initiative sort of side of stuff, or just the free reign your models have during the game and the stuff that they can do, shooting through obstacles, fighting over obstacles, everything that I really love, the granularity that you'd get from Middle-earth, you get in Pillage, and I really appreciate that. Except the only difference is it's with Vikings and Normans, or Dunlendings if you prefer. I mean, you could even use this rule set for Middle-earth, which, if you really wanted to have a bit of a change, something, if you don't want lots of stat lines to look at, this is the game for you. Now, when it comes to the combat side of stuff, I think the rules are super slick. If I was to argue there's a profile in the game, it's the weapon profile, and that is really just to tell you how far they can shoot and what movement penalties you have on it. So, like, take a javelin, for instance, it's got a 6-inch range. The movement penalty is none, so you can move your full distance and still throw the javelin. Looking at a bow or crossbow, you have to move half to use it. A crossbow, you have to stay still because it uses all your movement. So that's the only really sort of like, I guess, nitty gritty of the profile. The rest after that, as you can see, you just roll a dice and need to get that result depending on how they're armored. So if they're unarmored, you need a lower number. If they're fully armored, you need to get a high score. It's just really simple and straightforward, and I really appreciate that. So let's say you've chucked your javelin, you're shooting at someone that's got full armor on, and you've got that 6+. You just need to wait for them now to roll on their defense, which is at the very bottom here, and that's the roll they need to make to not die. Every model has 1 wound. The only difference, as I mentioned, is Chieftains, where they can take 3 hits before they die, which makes them last a little bit longer. So it's quite fast-paced, quite brutal as well, and there's no sort of like, oh, I'm slightly wounded. It's like, if you get hit and your armor doesn't stop it, you're dead. So very quick and brutal. Now, when it comes to combat, exact same principle. You just consult what weapon you've given you guys, and there's no sort of range for these because you're in melee, and you just work out what you need to hit. Now, the keen-eyed amongst you will notice there's some very interesting, different-looking stat letters here. What do these mean? Well, I spent ages looking through the book to try and find out what these actually meant. Maybe there was different terminology when it came to combat. Turns out it's just a translation issue, maybe from French to English. I don't know. Like I said, PDF's fine, but if you've got the book, just use the shooting order. But I'm going to mention it here now. So I've got my phone because I can't remember all the letters because, well, it's not that many, but I'm old, so forgive me. But the first one, where it says SP, you just turn that to UA, so that's unarmored. Then you have PP, which is some armor, so SA, and then you have PC, which is full armor. So it's in the same order. It's just, like I say, just a mishap with some form of translation. But yeah, don't let that bother you. You can always get a pen and change that in the book if you need to. I'm probably going to do that for myself because I might forget. But like I said, same order as shooting. It's just in different letters. Once you get familiar with the basic rules, there's a whole bunch of advanced rules that you can play through. Again, if you're familiar with Middle-earth, you've got like fighting over obstacles, you've got cavalry, obviously climbing, swimming. Plus there's some other cool rules like setting things on fire. I mean, that's got quite a chunk in the rule book actually, because it's called Pillage. You're going to be doing that. You're burning settlements and just ruining people's days. The other thing you've got is ships and naval battles. I know, wild. I mean, they are Vikings and stuff, I guess, in there. So they're going to be like moving around in their ships down rivers or maybe in the seas and stuff like that. Now, I have this box set up here. This is a Viking ship. It's 1/50 scale, so that's 28mm. I got this from Amazon. It was a steal. It was about 20 quid. Should still be on there. I think this is the exact same ship that you see in the photography in the book as well. So it's quite good. Obviously, you have to put some rigging on and some sails. That all comes inside as well. So the sails and the rigging does come inside. You don't have to. You can always wrap it up and make it not mid-sail. But it has loads of shields and loads of decals. So probably going to be a video down the line. Definitely want to get it done. Might get another, maybe have a ruined one or one on fire because we want to burn the Viking stuff as well as them burning our settlements. But yeah, really, really good little kit. Super reasonable when it comes to prices and the right scale. So really cool. But my personal favourite rule is Shield Wall. You can form shield walls in the game to make it a little bit more tactical for your stuff. You need to have at least 5 soldiers or warriors with shields to form a shield wall, and then you can build that up and then put other figures behind it to make it even bigger and deeper. Again, this will depend on the scale of game you're playing, depending on how many gold coins you're using, how many stuff your mates have got, but you can form shield walls, which I think is really good fun. Again, going to that Middle Earth kind of analogy, when you would form, naturally I would form shield walls in that game, you get more defense, you get your spearmen helping out. Made it a bit of an issue when things were backing off and things would get trapped. Again, I guess you do get the trapping rules, because if your models can't move anywhere in this game, they do get trapped and will sustain more damage, which I think, again, steers into that Middle Earth sort of like skirmish element, which I really like. But forming shield walls, very Viking-esque, and it just works, and it makes for an engaging and fun and different game as well. And again, to add some flavour to the game, there's some weather conditions as well. You can incorporate those into your skirmishes. This is a little bit of fun. There are some factions that are immune or ignore certain things. So like Saxons ignore the fog. Don't know why. Maybe they're used to fighting in the fog. Picts and Scots and Welsh can't form shield walls. And then stuff like the Britons are used to heavy rain. I mean, that's normal, isn't it? When you're living in England and you're Britons, you're kind of used to the rain. I mean, they'll probably grumble. Granted, you'll probably hear like a little bit of murmuring from your soldiers, like, it's raining again. But other than that, it doesn't bother them. So I like that. Like, they'll have negative effects, but certain factions will ignore those depending on where they're from or what they're used to. Or there might be some negatives as well. So yeah, that's cool. Another thing to do to add a little bit of flavour to your characters, so as opposed to just being like a chieftain that has like extra wounds or hit points and extra attacks, you get things called talents, and you can give up to 2 per chieftain. I think you can have multiple warlords or chieftains in your force, not loads, but I think it's like for every 20 figures or 20 warriors you can have a chieftain, which kind of adds to that. And again, there's restrictions very similar to Middle Earth, where you can only have so many bow armed and so many cavalry troops, again, so it doesn't get a bit too carried away. But the talents are really good fun. Some are generic, so all warlords can take them, and then some are more specific to certain factions. My personal favourite, however, is lewd provocation. Chieftain just gets his bits out, starts wiggling it out in front of the enemy, I guess to just like break their martial concentration. However, the Normans and the Franks are very prim and proper, and they will not get their bits out and wiggle it in front of the enemy. They're above that. So yes, they can't take that trait or talent. It's fair, I guess. Got a lot of armour on as well. It's quite a lot of effort to jimmy it up in it, I guess, maybe. I don't know. I'm not a Norman. All in all, I found the rules to be fairly straightforward. Certainly coming from a Middle Earth background, there's a lot of terminology, common terminology you'll see between lots of different games, especially if you play a lot, that you'll get the general gist. Again, it's sometimes worth just looking through because there might be some extra little rules in there. But for the most part, scanning through, playing through, it's very similar to Middle Earth. And that's not a bad thing. I think that's a really good thing. I love Middle Earth. It's a strong gaming system, really good gaming system. I would argue probably one of the best gaming systems Games Workshop's ever made. Don't know why they don't do more games with that system, because it's really, really good. And it's nice to see Pillage having a very similar one. So big fan of that. Now, as I mentioned at the start, I know diddly squat about the Dark Age period. Maybe enough to get me by from visuals. I mean, I've watched, like I say, a few TV shows. Uhtred of Bebenberg, the Bernard Cornwell novels, and the TV show Last Kingdom, so check that if you've never seen it. And of course, Ragnar from the Vikings TV series. Been catching up on that whilst painting as well, so it's been quite good having Vikings in the background whilst painting sort of Vikings. But the faction I picked for my skirmish force, or my pillage force, is the Rus. I don't know who the Rus are. I was like, I've got some models, they look cool. Pans out, one of my patrons, Tom, knows a lot about this stuff, says they're Vikings, but more Eastern-based Vikings. So they hung around like the Baltic Sea, the Black Sea, and that kind of area. So, and I thought, you know, I mean, these guys look cool. I want to paint some. They've got a cool Eastern vibe. I'll still use them as Vikings. Don't know what colours to paint them, so I went with green and red. I know Charlie likes green, and he might end up playing the game with me, so there's a win there. I've got some shield designs from Little Big Man Studios, which you can get off the Victrix website. I put them in there. I do cover how to apply these. They're really good shield designs. So if you're not very comfortable freehanding stuff or just painting simple shield designs, these are really, really good, like little decals, almost like stickers in a way. Very, very different way of applying transfers. But when I get to the paint guide, you'll see at the very end. So you can always skip to that. I'll put a little timestamp in there if you don't want to watch me paint a Rus figure and just see how the transfers are used. But these red ones with like a black crow raven symbol on it, pans out there the Varangian Guard, some elite bodyguards that used to hang around and get hired out by some of like the Eastern forces, like in Constantinople or whatever. Again, Tom told me at length about all this, so thank you, Tom, for your knowledge. I've been swatting up a bit about it, but yeah, I don't know very little about the Rus. Just wanted to paint some models up. I kind of like green and red. Kind of ties in a little bit Middle Earth as well, and also if I want to play some other stuff, because I'm going to base them the same for my fantasy games, I can use them as random baddies or like goodies that I can hire in. But I just like that shield design, and I know it's very regimented. Here we go again, Peachy doing regimented stuff for Vikings. It's not historically correct. I don't know what is with this period. I'm just fudging my way through, and I reckon probably like 4 warbands from now I'll be like, yep, I know exactly what I'm doing. I had it with my Napoleonics, and when I first started the British, I use Sharp as my reference. So I'm doing the same here. I'm using TV shows as my reference. And then I get more into it. And I think that's something to be said about that. Don't worry about the history. Just go with the vibe and what you enjoy. And then the history will come in time. I mean, I know so much more about the Napoleonic British army and their uniforms than I ever did when I first started painting models that look like Sharp. So again, that just comes with time. So I imagine the same will be for my Rus. So what I'm going to do now is move on to doing some painting. I'm going to cover 2 models, an unarmoured one and an armoured one. For the some armour, you'd probably use one or the other, depending if it's got more mail on or if it's just got a shield. Now, for the unarmoured one, I've used a light undercoat. I've used trench brown here. I quite like that colour. And what I'm going to do is just dry brush initially over that and then start applying lots of speed paints. A couple of little just normal fanatic paint here and there. But it's a really quick, efficient way of getting unarmoured troopers on the table. Most of the effort is going to be probably adding a little bit of love to the face and those really cool shield decals. That's where the effort goes, especially if you want to do loads. So this guide can be useful if you're doing like a big army or just a skirmish force. And then the armored ones, I'm starting with a silver undercoat because they've either got mail vests or lots of like armor on there, so the helmet and like hauberks and stuff like that. So it makes sense for me to start with a silver undercoat, and then I just use some fanatic paints and pick out. So there's going to be some colors that aren't exactly the same. So if I'm using like a green speed paint, I'm going to try and find a green fanatic paint that matches close to it, but it won't be super identical. But that's fine because I can then mix and match between when I'm painting through. But that's the general principle here, is covering an unarmored dude and an armored dude, and then you just swap and change depending on what you want to do with them. But yeah, let's go and paint a Rus Warrior, or 2 Rus Warriors. So beginning with our unarmored warrior, I'm going to start with a dry brush of Tomb King Tan. So what I'm going to do is just wipe off some of that on some tissue and then just gently dry brush that over the trench brown undercoated model. Again, I'm just aiming here just to flick out those highlights, because when I start applying the speed paints, that's going to give it some extra punch and definition as it slowly dries and pulls away. So the first speed paint I'm going to be using is Ghoul Green. So this is going to be for my green cloth details. So again, I'll do this across all the models I'm painting. Again, just picking out like tunics or trousers, just break it up a little bit. Makes it look a little bit more ad hoc between the forces. But yeah, for this guy, it's just mostly his tunic. Then for any leather details, I'm going to coat over everything with ruddy brown. So that's the belt, the jerkin or hauberk, boots, whatever. And then I can add another colour later on if I want to break some of those up a little bit more. So just to start off with, all things that want to be brown, even that's the wood details, I'll get in ruddy fur. So again, work my way around. Then for his hauberk or his big leather jerkin, I'm going to get some satchel brown and apply that over the ruddy brown colour I've just done. Again, this will make it look a little bit darker and then help set it apart from the belt and the other details around it. Again, this is speed paint. This is designed so you can paint lots of stuff really quickly and, you know, less faff really in the long run. Also for his trousers, because initially I just did these all brown, I can do like brown trousers or like leathery trousers. Now on my paint I have a lot of golds and choices for metallics, but sometimes I just want that kind of perfect gold and I couldn't find one, so I decided to mix my own. So I'm just getting some greedy gold and some gunmetal and doing a 50-50 mix. So what I'm going to do here is pick out any like faded gold or like brass details on things like belt buckles, sword hilts, the boss on the shield, also the trim around the shield. You can do these silver, you can mix it up, but I just wanted to go for this sort of like light gold or brass kind of tone. So again, just work your way around, picking out the shield, don't forget to do the edges, and then of course there's the inside of the shield to do as well. Again, I'm just using the edge of the brush where possible here. So if I need silver details, whether that's blades, axes, whatever, just going to pick those out with gunmetal. So pretty much straight from the pot. Then for the skin initially, I decided to put some Crusader skin over the trench brown. And again, for more Eastern kind of tones, I guess that could work quite nicely, but I didn't quite like the finish. So in the end, I opted to get some Paratrooper tan and then just base coat those areas instead. I mean, I could have used bone, I guess, and been a bit heavy on the dry brush and used Crusader skin. There's no right or wrong way. I just thought I'd use Paratrooper tan because, well, I like using that colour. And I'll be using that on the other model anyway, so it kind of makes sense to use it twice. Then I'm going to get some dark tone or whatever wash you want to use and apply that all over. So this is going to be over everything. So that's the leather, the silvers, the woods, the cloth. It's just my way of getting some shadows in the model, add some extra definition. So when it dries, that's all done for me. There's less effort. Some people don't like this stage. It's totally fine. And when that's dry, you can leave it as it is, or you can just start picking out some erase details. Mostly here, I'm just going to do the face. On this guy, again, this is like speed painted armies and forces. I'm just going to leave all the other colours as they are and then just concentrate on the face. And also the shield, which I'll come to in a bit. So just, yeah, picking out the raised areas like cheeks, brows, frowns that they might have. And if you have like a red speed paint at hand or something like that, I'm just going to drop a little bit in around like the eyelids and around the mouth and stuff like that, just to make it add a little bit more punch to the face, just makes it feel a little bit more organic. Then get some grim black. I've thinned this down a little bit. I'm just going to paint that over his beard. I could have left his beard as it was, but I quite like the idea of it being black. And the other reason as well is I want to do a little bit of like a shaved effect. So I'm just going to thin it down a little bit more than what I did when I applied it to the hair and the beard. And then initially just to start applying it around the head and then trying to get a bit more of a hairline going on. So I'm just going to stab it in places. So that gives a sense of a hairline. And also as it dries, because it is kind of like the same kind of tone as the hair and you've seen some of the skin through, it gives that shaved effect. So again, just work your way around. And of course you can apply it to the eyebrows because these guys have some very definitive eyebrows. Now moving on to our full armored warrior, starting from a silver undercoat. I'm just going to get some green skin. This is close to ghoul green from a finished point of view. So I'm just going to apply this to any like cloth details I want to do. I'm doing this to the trousers instead of the tunic. Again, you can break that up depending on the models you're painting. Then I'm going to get some basilisk red and apply this to his tunic instead. Again, that helps break the shape up a bit. And well, he's my leader, isn't he? I want him to look a little bit more fearsome, so I'm having a little bit more red on him. Don't know why red makes him look more fearsome. Then I'm going to get some mud splatter. So this is kind of like a nice brown tone. It's one of the World War II paints. So I'm going to use this for all my leather details. So I'm just going to go around picking out the boots, any straps around like on the greaves, belts, those kind of things. Now there's a lot of detail going on the belt here because there's like a little scabbard at the front. And then it took me a little minute or two to work out what was going on for the belt. Of course, there's things like pouches as well to do. So don't forget to pick out the pouch. And of course, any other leather details like the scabbard. Most of the time, I only need one coat. I also noticed on the side, there's some straps that are kind of connect the mail vest or the armor they've got, so I thought I'd pick those out as well. Then I'll get some dark olive and pick out the haft of his Danax. So I'm just going to go around and use that. It's a nice colour, and I'll also use this for the fur on the cloak as well. I'll probably dry brush this up with some other colours later on, but initially it's a really nice sort of like browny grey kind of colour. So I'm just going to base coat that all over. This was quite thin down on the fur just to go in those cracks, and then just apply a second coat if you need to. Then using that mix of gold and gunmetal, I'm just going to start picking out any brass or details that I want to look a little bit more richer on the model. So that's things like the details on the sword and the scabbard. So again, just work your way around doing those. And of course, picking out any details on the helmet. So whether that's the nose guard or like some of the like trim that's going around on the helmet itself, just helps break it up a little bit and stops it from looking too much like a silver mass. And then it's just a matter of picking out any flesh. This guy really only has his hands exposed. Could have painted him as leather gloves if I wanted to. But yeah, I'm just picking out the hands. And then I realised that maybe I could just drop something a little bit into his eye holes, although when I shade it, that will disappear a bit. And then I realised on the actual jerkin or mail vest, there's some like almost like leathery bits. So I thought I'd pick those out in a colour as well. So I'm using green skin for that. Again, breaks the shape up a bit, adds a bit more green on the model. Then it's shade time. So again, like the previous model, I'm just going to apply this all over. Again, just let it settle in those recesses. Again, if you do find it pooling, especially when it gets close to the feet, just dry off your brush, soak off any excess. And again, don't forget to do it on the actual fur coat as well. Then when that's dry, I'm just going to start reapplying some of the colours. So the base colours here. So I just did a little dry brush on the mail vest. And then I'm just going to pick out some silver on the helmet and other details, maybe on the axe or whatever. So I'm just going to go around and do those. Again, it adds a little bit more punch because sometimes the wash knocks back the shine a bit. And then for the red tunic, I'm just going to use that same colour I base coated with, but I'm just going to keep this to the edges. So it's more of a highlight now. But that's a great thing about like using a colour and then reapplying it after the base coat is you can just add a little bit more punch with just one colour. Just going to add a little bit more here on the actual raised areas of the cloth. There's a large flat surface area there. And of course, don't forget the folds on the arm. And then the same thing, going around with some green skin, picking out the raised areas on the trousers. Again, you don't have to do this stage if you don't want to. I just like to add a little bit more punch to those areas. I know, I say punch a lot, don't I? Again, working your way around, picking out those green details on the mail vest as well. Then I'm going to move on to some dry brushing. So I'm going to get some mud splatter. That's the colour I use for the leather. I'm just going to dry brush this around the fur. Now I'm trying to be a bit neat around his face here because chances I'm going to get a little bit on the actual armour and any other details around. So just tidy back up with those if you do that, like I've done here. It's kind of natural for that to happen. And then I'm just going to use the Tomb King Tan, which was the initial colour I used on the Speedpaint version. And then I'm just going to pick out some lighter areas on that fur coat. And then use the same colour to pick out the claws. Again, quite simple and straightforward. Then I realised some of the areas just need a little bit more extra depth here and there. So I got some of that grim black, the same way I applied for the hair on the unarmoured one. And then I just apply that to the boots and just go around the edges a little bit, just to add a little bit more of a border between certain details. And then my favourite colour at the moment is Beret Maroon. So I'm just going to use that as an extra highlight on the cloth. Because he's going to be my leader, I just thought I could do a little bit more punch on that red. Again, work your way around, take your time, have some fun. That's the important bit, have fun. Enjoy it. Don't get stressed. Now for the shields. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to be using some decals from Little Big Men Studio. So you can get these on the Victrix website. I'm going to go for the Varangian shield design here. I really like that. So the trick really is, it is like a big sticker with a plastic coating. So I'm just going to slowly get some scissors and some very small scissors and cut around the shield. It's going to be a little bit wibbly wobbly in places, but I'm not too bothered about that because sometimes we all make little errors when we're cutting. But just try and keep it as neat as you can. You can use a knife if you want to, but I prefer using scissors. Got more control when I'm doing that. And then I'm just going to peel away that kind of like plasticky coating that protects the stickiness. And then I'm going to place it face down onto the shield. Obviously make sure the design's in the orientation I want it. So as you can see, I'm making sure it's face up. Now, some of these shield designs are cut are a bit too small for the shields themselves. That's something to be mindful of when you are applying them. But then what you need to do is get some water and apply it to that actual paper backing. So you just work your way around on whatever shield you've got or whatever model it is, and then apply it on. And then as you can see, you just peel it away and the shield design is then placed onto your shield. It's amazing. It's magic. I love it. It really helps elevate the models so much more as well with these really beautiful designs. I'm just going to dab it down a little bit because it's a little bit wet. Also, they do have a little bit of a shiny finish as well. So what I will do is just get some matte varnish. Any matte varnish, doesn't really matter. And then just apply that over and that'll just knock some of that shine off. But I really love these shield designs. They are so good. Now, if you find that your shield design is slightly smaller than the shield you placed on, because certain designs go with certain shields, then just find a colour that's close and then maybe just paint the same kind of colour around the edge. Again, it's just a big sort of like design. No one's going to notice it too much. Or what you can do, like I'm doing here, is get like a muddy kind of colour, like I'm using mid-battle dress, and just make it look a bit like dirty and old. You will see a bit of a line, but it's not the end of the world. So if you have made a boo-boo like I did on these ones, then that's fine. And if the varnish is a bit foggy, just wipe some of that off with some water. Then it's just a matter of gluing any loose shields onto your models, just to really finish them off. Again, make sure that design's facing the right way, because that'll be embarrassing if it's not. So just apply it to this guy. And then I've got my Huskarl with his Dane axe. So I thought I'd give him a shield so he can swap and change between the battle. What a badass. And there we are. My Rus are completed. I'm so pleased with these guys. I really like the colour scheme, actually. That green and red just works for me. Again, I don't care if it's not historically accurate. I had fun painting them. That's what it's about, having fun. And I really do think those shield decals really do help elevate the models as well. So even if you have no talent in freehand and you just got your stuff base coated, these shield designs are going to make you look like the boss when you're on the battlefield. And the great thing is those shield designs don't just cover the Dark Age period, they cover a multitude of periods. So ancient, so you can do Romans and Greeks, more later Roman periods, all the way up to like medieval, so early to late medieval stuff. And then there's banners as well. So there's a whole plethora of periods they cover, and there's a lot of decal shields and banners on the website, so do check them out if you're looking for like quick easy ways of doing your freehanding. Certainly if you're doing like Greek hoplite shields with all those pretty imagery, that certainly saved me a lot of time, that's for sure. But yeah, really like the Little Big Man Studio stuff. So yeah, more of that. A very strange way of applying them. Quick, again, I do mention this in the video, I want to point out that obviously every shield, depending, like certainly more with the Vikings and Saxons ones, they have lots of different sizes of round shield. So do be mindful when you are cutting out your little decals that certain ones are only for certain size shields. And again, if you do boo-boo that, there is a way of fixing it, like I show you in the paint guide. So yeah, don't worry about it. As always, a massive thank you for watching the video. Massive thank you to my patrons for your constant support. You guys are awesome. Tom, shout out to Tom again for helping me out with like some of the information regarding the Rus. Again, if you want to get yourself a Viking longbow, do check out Amazon. I'll put a link in the description. Should probably do an affiliate link for that. That would make a lot of sense, to be honest. But yeah, really Billy bargain that Viking longbow is. So yeah, do, if you're after like well, even I guess for like Middle Earth or anything like a fantasy game, it's perfect scale. So be worth investing in at least one for your gaming tables as a cool piece of scenery. Quick reminder, there's only probably like 1 week before PeachCon, so if you are looking to come down, do check out the link I'll put in the description for that as well. So if you, because that's for that ticket bright, so if you want to get yourself a ticket, do go and check that out. And also, I always forget this part. Obviously, I'm sponsored. I'm part of the factory team of Army Painter. There is a code which is in the description as well, which gives you 5% off when you're buying your paints. If you do buy paints from Army Painter, save yourself a couple of pennies here and there. But yeah, I mean, that's me. I've talked about Pillage. I'm a big fan of this rule system, mostly because it feels like Middle Earth, and I do like that game. I really enjoyed painting my Rus, and I'm kind of like eager now to paint some more stuff. So I imagine when it comes around to doing a video about this ship, I'll probably have some more stuff painted. I've got some armoured and unarmoured Saxons as well. I've got some Norman cavalry. I need to get some Norman on foot. But I guess on their website as well, they're releasing, or looking to release, or is coming soon, they're doing some Franks, some Picts, Welsh, Scots, and then just a load of cool like stuff like farm animals, and then like market stalls, bundles of food, just stuff to use as like scatter on your battlefields as well. So do check those out too. Again, it's just a fun company I like looking at and buying and painting their miniatures. So yeah, go support Victrix if you like painting historical or not historical stuff. You want fantasy figures, they've got so much choice there. But yeah, I'm gonna go off now and probably make a nice little monastery with some monks just chilling out, making some mead, get some bees, tending to the allotments, and then my Rus are just gonna rock up and they're just gonna say hi. And really, you know, it'll be a really friendly engagement. That's what I want to do. I'm going to do Peace Hammer. That's what I want to do. I'm not going to go with like murder and pillaging and just like ruining the monk's day. It's going to make a nice little setup where they're just having tea, square, sandwiches, like cucumber sandwiches, maybe some scones. I don't even know they were made in those days, but I don't care because we're going to do some fun Peace Hammer. The Rus are going to chill out and talk to the monks, and maybe protect them from some other Vikings heading towards Lindisfarne, which didn't go well for the poor monks there. Yeah, I only know that from watching Vikings and a section in the book. I think I'm all waffled out. See you at PeachCon if you're coming. And other than that, peach out. Love you all.